Let me ask you something real personal right out the gate. You've got to understand something foundational if you're ever going to develop a positive mental attitude that can't be broken, bent, or buried. And that's this. Your mind is a battlefield, not a playground. This is not a place where you can casually entertain every thought, emotion, or opinion that comes your way. Your mind is where wars are won or lost before you ever step foot into the ring of real life. When I was younger, I thought success was mostly about strategy, learning how to do the right things, knowing the right people, making the right moves. But the older I got, the more battles I fought, I realized something deeper. My biggest enemy was never outside me. It was inside my own head. Because before I ever missed a goal, gave up on a dream, or let fear take control, the battle was already lost in my mind. The mind doesn't play fair. It doesn't wait for a good day to attack. It doesn't wait until you're well rested, spiritually strong, and emotionally ready. No, it attacks in the dark. It shows up when you're tired, when you're disappointed, when you've just failed or feel unseen. It whispers lies that sound like facts. It's a battlefield filled with landmines of insecurity, fear, comparison, self-doubt, and memories you haven't healed from yet. If you walk into a battlefield thinking it's a playground, you're going to get blindsided. And that's what most people are doing, walking through life with unguarded minds, wondering why they can't find peace, why they keep sabotaging themselves, why every time they take a step forward, they slide back again. It's not because they're incapable, it's because they haven't realized the terrain they're living on. Every thought you have is a soldier. The question is, what army are your thoughts fighting for? Are they fighting for your future, your purpose, your calling? Or are they waging war against your confidence, your clarity, your faith? I remember a season when I was starting over, financially, emotionally, spiritually. I had a little voice in my head that kept saying, you blew it. You're too old. You missed your moment. And for a while, I listened. I let that voice live rent-free in my mind. I fed it. I agreed with it. And guess what? My actions followed that belief. I was still showing up, still putting in work, but I was already defeated on the inside. Then one day I realized I don't need to negotiate with that voice. I need to evict it. Because you can't win a battle you're not willing to fight. And you can't fight a battle if you're pretending it's just noise. You've got to see it for what it is, a full-scale spiritual, emotional, and psychological assault on your purpose. And once you see that, you get serious about defending your mind like your life depends on it. Because it does. Every stronghold starts with a thought. Every breakthrough starts with a thought. Every destiny begins with what you decide to believe. So no, your mind is not a playground. It's not a space for every meme, opinion, news headline, or fear-based idea to dance around freely. It is sacred ground. And until you treat it that way, you'll keep living beneath your potential and calling it normal. This is war. And the prize is you, your peace, your power, your future. So it's time to suit up, speak up, and show up with authority. Because a renewed mind isn't optional for victory, it's essential. You cannot develop an unbreakable positive mental attitude if you don't first learn how to interrupt the negative narrative running in your mind and replace it with truth. And I need you to hear me on this. It's not enough to just try to think positive. That's not power. That's wishful thinking if you don't back it up with truth. You got to learn how to confront the lie, challenge it, and then replace it with something that aligns with who God says you are and what he says you're capable of. See, the problem is not that you have negative thoughts. We all do. The problem is when you start believing them, repeating them, and living like they're true. Most people are not controlled by their reality. They're controlled by their story. The story they've been telling themselves since they were 7 years old. The story someone else told them that they never stopped believing. I'm not good enough. I always mess things up. I'll never get ahead. That kind of life is for other people. You've been narrating your life with words that don't serve your purpose. And the danger of repetition is reinforcement. Whatever you repeat long enough becomes what you believe, and what you believe becomes your identity, and your identity drives your decisions. That's why it's not just about mindset, it's about spiritual warfare. The enemy isn't just after your money or your time, he's after your mind. Because if he can corrupt your thinking, he can control your entire life. I've lived it. I remember being in the middle of a tough financial storm, and I kept saying things like, nothing's working. I can't catch a break. Maybe I'm not meant for this. I thought I was just venting, but what I was really doing was prophesying defeat over my own life. I wasn't just acknowledging my problems. I was agreeing with them. I was signing off on them like they had the final word. Until one day, I realized that I was the one keeping the cycle alive by feeding it with my words. So I made a decision, not a feeling, a decision. I decided I wasn't going to be the mouthpiece of my own misery anymore. I stopped letting those thoughts run wild, and I started taking them captive. I caught the lie and called it what it was. I didn't try to rationalize it. I replaced it. And what did I replace it with? Truth, scripture, identity, promise. I stopped saying I'm not enough, and I started saying I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I stopped saying I'm always behind and started saying God's timing is perfect, and I'm right on schedule. You've got to reprogram your mind like your future depends on it, because it does. You've got to make truth louder than fear, louder than shame, louder than doubt. And the only way to do that is through intentional interruption. When that thought hits you, interrupt it. When that old voice creeps in, you stop it in its tracks and replace it with something stronger. This isn't about pretending the struggle doesn't exist. This is about refusing to let the struggle write your story. You are not the victim of your thoughts. You are the master of them. And when you choose to reject the lie and replace it with truth, you're not just thinking better, you're becoming someone stronger. You're taking back the pen, reclaiming your narrative, and rewriting your future with faith, power, and purpose. Let me tell you something. Most people never understand your focus is your superpower. Not your talent, not your connections, not your degrees, your focus. Because wherever your focus goes, your energy flows. And wherever your energy flows, that's what grows. So if you're wondering why your fear feels stronger than your faith, why your problems look bigger than your purpose, you need to check your focus. See, most people let life decide what they focus on. They wake up and react to whatever's loudest. Their phone, the news, an email, somebody else's crisis. Their focus is up for grabs every single day, and they wonder why they feel lost. Let me make this plain. If you don't direct your focus, life will distract your focus. And you cannot have an unbreakable mental attitude when your mind is being pulled in 15 different directions every hour. Focus is not just a mental act, it is a discipline. And like any discipline, it has to be trained. You think athletes become great by accident? You think champions rise by just showing up when it's easy? No, they train. They control what they look at. They decide what gets their attention and what gets ignored. You've got to train your focus the same way. When I was starting out, I didn't have much. I didn't have a massive team. I didn't have big money, and I definitely didn't have comfort. But I had focus. I told myself, I may not be the most gifted, but I'll be the most dialed in. I locked in on the vision. I blocked out the noise. I ignored distractions, doubters, even my own doubts. I trained my mind to stay fixed on the outcome, not the obstacle. And because I focused, I finished. Some of y'all are failing, not because you're not capable, but because you're constantly starting over. Every time you gain traction, you shift your focus. Every time it gets hard, you pivot. Every time you see someone else doing something better, you abandon your path. Listen to me. Consistency beats brilliance every time, and focus fuels consistency. And let's get one thing clear. Focusing doesn't mean pretending problems don't exist. It means you don't dwell on them. It means you refuse to let what's wrong blind you from what's possible. It means you choose, yes, choose, to give your energy to what lifts you up, not what tears you down. You've got to learn how to protect your focus like it's gold. That means filtering your conversations. That means limiting your exposure to people who constantly complain, gossip, or drain your spirit. That means saying no to things that don't align with your mission, even if they're popular, even if they're fun. Every yes to a distraction is a no to your destiny. I started setting boundaries with my time, my thoughts, even my entertainment. I started feeding my focus with books, with the word, with wisdom, with declarations of faith. I trained my mind to see possibilities where other people saw problems. I started thinking, what's the opportunity in this instead of why is this happening to me? And that simple shift, that disciplined focus, changed my entire life. So if you want to develop a positive mental attitude that can't be broken, you've got to train your focus. You've got to treat your attention like a sacred currency and invest it only where the return is purpose. Because whatever you give your focus to, you give your future to. And you can't afford to focus on things that are beneath your calling. Focus is the force that makes the difference between a wandering life and a winning one. And when you focus on your calling, your vision, and the promise of God over your life, no storm, no setback, no distraction can shake your mindset because you're not just thinking, you're locked in. And when you're locked in, you're unstoppable. If you want to develop a truly unbreakable positive mental attitude, you've got to stop waiting to feel grateful and start conditioning gratitude until it becomes your default. I'm not talking about a surface level thank you when things are good. I'm talking about a heart posture that says, I choose to be grateful even when it doesn't make sense. Let me be real with you. Gratitude isn't a feeling. It's not some random emotion that shows up when everything's working in your favor. Gratitude is a decision. It's a discipline. It's a way of seeing the world through the lens of abundance rather than lack, of opportunity rather than obstacle, of purpose rather than pain. And the moment you train yourself to choose gratitude, regardless of circumstances, your entire mindset begins to shift. There were seasons in my life, broke seasons, lonely seasons, dark seasons, when it looked like I had nothing to be grateful for. I wasn't living in the promise, I was stuck in the process. But I made a decision. I would not let what I lacked rob me of what I had. I would not let disappointment cancel out my destiny. I would find something, anything to thank God for. Because here's what I've learned. You don't wait for gratitude to come after breakthrough. You use gratitude to bring the breakthrough. Gratitude shifts your perspective from what's missing to what's possible. It takes your eyes off the delay and puts them back on the promise. It silences the voice of fear and amplifies the voice of faith. When you start thanking God for what you have, you create space for him to give you what you need. When you start speaking gratitude, you start sowing joy. And when you sow joy, you reap strength. That's why the Bible says the joy of the Lord is your strength. That's not just poetic, that's strategic. Let me give you a practical truth. Gratitude is like a muscle. If you don't use it, it weakens. But when you train it, it grows. You've got to make gratitude a daily habit, a non-negotiable part of your routine. I'm not just talking about saying thanks at dinner. I'm talking about writing it down, speaking it out, praying it loud. I'm talking about waking up and before your feet even hit the ground, saying, God, thank you that I'm breathing. Thank you that I have purpose. Thank you for one more chance to get it right. Gratitude has nothing to do with your bank account and everything to do with your perspective. I've seen wealthy people who are miserable because all they see is what they don't have. And I've seen people with almost nothing live with a light in their eyes because they've trained their minds to see the gift in every day. Don't you let your attitude be controlled by external blessings. Let it be anchored in internal vision. See, when gratitude becomes your default, negativity can't stick. When your reflex is to praise instead of panic, the enemy can't get a foothold. When you face resistance and your first response is, God, I know you're still good, you've just stepped into a mindset that the world can't shake. Because now your attitude isn't based on what's happening around you, it's rooted in what's unshakable within you. Attitude doesn't deny reality, it just chooses to see it through the eyes of victory. It doesn't mean every day will be easy. It means that even on the hard days, you decide to remember what's still working, what's still possible, and who is still in control. So make gratitude your go-to. Not your backup plan, not your last resort, but your first weapon. Because when you lead with thanks, you lead with strength. And when gratitude becomes who you are, not just what you say, you unlock a mental attitude that nothing in this world can break.